I'd like to know how is it, because from my perspective it's almost impossible to eradicate corruption, but there's always ways to minimize or almost scaring people from being corrupt because of what they can get as a impediment. So how do you plan to treat corruption and ensure that in your, say for instance, you become the president of Jamaica or the prime minister of Jamaica, how can we expect you to behave when it comes to corruption?
Sure, very good question. Now, corruption, as you said before, you cannot have a corrupt-free environment in a world of men.
Right.
So what you can have, however, is a low corruption environment. For example, what they achieved in Singapore. Singapore is one of the most anti-corrupt country in the world. So if our leaders were interested in eliminating corruption in Jamaica, all they would have to do was simply copy Singapore if they wanted to eliminate corruption. Now I'll tell you how we're going to do it. We have studied carefully Singapore, but we also have some ideas of our own building on that. The first thing you must do to eliminate corruption is to design a proper system of internal controls with proper checks and balances. It works everywhere. It's, for example, if you're working in a company, if the company has poor internal controls, you'll have high incidences of corruption. It's that simple. If you have high systems of internal controls and checks and balances, you will have lower incidence of corruption. Whenever you create an environment that incentivizes corruption, you get more of it. Jamaica is such an environment. We're designed to incentivize corruption, so we get more of it. Now, here are some basic ways that we will eliminate corruption from the top down. Watch me carefully. It's actually much more simpler than people think. Right now in Jamaica today, if you're a member of parliament on the government side, and by government side I mean the party that wins the most seats in the House. If you're an MP, your primary goal in life as an MP is that the Prime Minister, who is the leader of your party, that if he wins a seat, is for him to give you a ministerial position. Why do you want a ministerial position? Well, in a ministerial position, you have far more clout, you have access to far more money, and you have more opportunities to engage in corruption if you're a minister of government. Similarly, in our system, the Prime Minister, he appoints 13 members of the Senate, while the opposition leader appoints 8 members of the Senate. That is so ridiculous, but let's look at it carefully. If the Prime Minister appoints senators, those 13 senators he appoints, their sole ambition is that he will further appoint them to a ministerial position. So now what you have happening is your senators and your MPs, the majority of them, are beholden to the Prime Minister. And they're incentivized to cover for the Prime Minister and for their party because they have a vested interest to do what will make them be seen as good for the party and therefore be rewarded with a ministerial seat. Now, when you do that, here's what you have done. Your senators and your MPs who are supposed to be providing oversight concerning the functions of your executive, they're now commingled with the executive. So they're now conflicted. You don't have a conflict of interest because your senator who's supposed to be saying, let me scrutinize what the executive branch is doing, that is the head of government, in this case, Prime Minister,
Right.
the cabinet being the ministers. Your senators and your representatives, their job should be to be scrutinizing whether or not the executive branch, Prime Minister and Cabinet, are doing things properly, meaning that citizens are getting value from money. So we collect $2 trillion in taxes, have we spent that $2 trillion properly? And they should be microscopically looking to see if the government is making any mistakes or doing anything wrong. Instead, they're also a part of the cabinet. So you cannot, you're now asking them to monitor themselves because you're in the House of Parliament as an MP or a senator, but you're also a minister of government, or you're hoping to be a minister of government. So that means you're not going to ever truly, seriously criticize or study for the purpose of the benefit of your constituents what's going on and attack any corruption because you're now a part of it. So you are implicated on two fronts. One, if you're appointed, you're implicated. And two, if you're not yet appointed, you're hoping to be, so you're conflicted. So do you realize, therefore, that two things happening here? One, you are beholden to the Prime Minister and you're beholden to the party that got you elected. And most importantly, your party is beholden to the PSOJ oligarchy that funded your election. So where does the people fit in here? Nowhere. So even though you're an MP and you were elected by, let's say, 30 people, they have no concern on your plate. They're low on your agenda because your primary goal as an MP is to suit your party and to suit the PSOJ oligarchy. Now let's talk about the opposition side. So if you're now an opposition MP, what is your motivation? Well, we have told the people that we have a government and an opposition. Follow me carefully now. So by the way we design our constitution, we say the party with the most seats is the government and everybody else is the opposition. So what you have just done, you have told the people that they will oppose no matter what. So even if it's good, they're going to say it's bad. And if it's bad, they're going to say it's worse or bad. So you have now created a situation where you cannot trust the opposition because they're normally going to say it's bad if it's good and if worse or bad if it's really bad. So you can't trust them. Now let me ask you a question now before I go on to the next part. If you're running your company, you have a company, and this company, the goal of the company is to make a profit by meeting the needs of its customers and growing its customer base. Is it advantageous for you to take your board of directors and split them in two and say one half must fight against the other half on the board, and then that's going to result in you having a very good outcome for your company? Is that logical?
It's not, to me, it's not logical, no.
But that's what they've done. The design of our constitution, the design of our government, and in other countries they do the same thing, but it's unwise. So what we want to do, the UIC, we want to create what we call a non-partisan constitutional republic. 3 words: non-partisan constitutional republic. Now they're talking about it because I have brought it up and really pushed it in there. So, but before, they just sat there on their big fat whatever, and they just allowed Jamaica to become more and more and more dependent on foreign oil, as opposed to finding ways to make us more and more independent. Now, Costa Rica has done it. Costa Rica has made their country more reliant on local production of energy and have a smaller need for external imports for their energy needs. Costa Rica has done it. We can do it too. Look what we've done with our agriculture. We had some very bright leaders who taught our people to give up organic farming, to buy imported fertilizer, and to give up managing our own seed stock, and to import GMO seeds that wipe out our indigenous seeds. And then eventually, because we can't keep up with that, we decimate our farmers because we cannot compete with the local imports by following the same methodology as our competitors. Remember, the competitors produce the fertilizer that we buy from them. The competitor produce the seeds, then we buy from them, and then we try to sell it back to them. That's ridiculous, because they would have had a much more advantage over us. So what we should have done, and which the UIC is proposing, and they're gradually going to try to adopt in a way that doesn't work, we propose making Jamaica the organic food capital of the world, where we manage our own seed stock, like good non-GMO seeds, and create a seed bank, and make sure we're keen on protecting our ecosystem, protecting our seeds, so that we become independent of the imported GMO seeds, building a large organic fertilizer production facility here, distributed, so we become a huge producer of organic fertilizer, and borrowing the technology from others that have been using it very well, like the Netherlands, which is one of the smallest European country, and yet still the second largest exporter of food in the world. How could you get that? A small European country without our advantages, being the second largest producer and exporter of food, second only to the US, which is far bigger than them. If they can do it, we can adopt practices, water management practices of Israel, greenhouse farming and scientific farming like the Netherlands, and making our focus organics and becoming a competitively advantaged piece of the world that supplies the world with true organics, and let the rest of the people fight for the non-organic. We own the organic space and becoming the leader. That's 500,000 jobs off the bat, and not low-paying jobs. You're talking about scientists, engineers, administrators, accountants, technicians, agronomists. So you're talking we're not talking like, the cane cutting jobs. We're talking about real, solid jobs. And then we mechanize it, of course, but still make it human dependent, build the intelligence of our people to become very involved in this, run it right across the country, have a major factory in each of the 14 parishes, at least one major factory that is organic food production factory, invest in cold storage facilities, using geothermal energy to maximize our yield, and take Jamaica to another level as the leader of food production in the world, organic food.
Yeah,